This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority.
Good afternoon, Assembly members, colleagues and members of the public, both in the chamber and watching the webcast at home. I am Mary Harpley and I'm the Chief Officer of the Greater London Authority. I am opening now the annual meeting of the London Assembly. In a moment, the Chair of the London Assembly for the 22-23 Assembly year, Assembly Member Dr. Onkar Sahota, will make a speech about his year as Chair. After that speech, I will take any other speakers, and we will then move to the election of the Chair of the Assembly for the 23-24 Assembly year. So first, to you, Assembly Member Sahota.
Thank you. Members, it's been an honour to serve as Chair of the London Assembly for the past year. It's been a year of change, both here at City Hall and more widely in London. We've been adjusting to our life in the new home here in City Hall, in the Royal Docks, as well as adjusting to opportunities and challenges that hybrid working brings. Since the move to our new home, it's been a pleasure to welcome both Londoners and those further afield back to City Hall. I've been delighted to see more people returning to the public gallery here and to host visits to City Hall from international delegations and university student groups. I know I speak on behalf of the whole London Assembly when I say that it was particularly pleasing to meet the delegation from Kyiv City Hall earlier this year and to reiterate our solidarity with the people of the Ukraine. Last September, we witnessed the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a deeply sad and historic moment for many Londoners. And today, we look forward towards Saturday for the coronation of Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Londoners have also faced challenges and changes in the last year. For example, the cost of living crisis, the trust in the Metropolitan Police, and the ongoing crisis in the NHS. I'm proud of Assembly work in these areas and how we advocated for Londoners. I know the Assembly will continue to champion the issues that are important to those living here in our capital city. I want to pay particular thanks to our Deputy Chair, Andrew Boff, who has supported me throughout my chairship. I want to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to all the secretariat staff for the support and commitment to working for the Assembly and ensuring we can be the voice of London. I know that it can be challenging at times, particularly during the changing and unpredictable times we've experienced this year, and so your hard work and dedication to Londoners does not go amiss. And finally, I can assure you that I will support the next the next chair. And I will support the next. I will support the next mayor also. I'll support the next chair of the assembly, and who I know will be an outstanding ambassador for London, and continue to work on behalf of all Londoners. So thank you very much for giving me the huge honour and privilege of being your chair in the last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Sahota. Would anybody like to say a few words? Assemblymember Duval.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just say, can I thank Onkar Sahota for the work that he's done in the past 4 years? I know it might not feel like this, but I do think that you managed to upset is probably the right word, a number of us around this table at different times during the last year, including the Mayor. And in some ways, I won't mention the words impartial because I don't think it comes to mind, not saying you were partial, but the fact that you managed to annoy almost all of us at some stage should be taken as some sort of compliment in this crazy world we live in politics. But I do want to thank you, and just to highlight a certain issue that not many of the members around this table was, but the 4 political leaders were. Now, many of us in politics are shrinking violets, but seeing Onkar engage with the future king on behalf of the Assembly, and including the Mayor, in terms of engaging with the king, was a privilege to see, and was an experience that I will always remember of my civic life. And I want to say thank you for that, because like all these positions that both you and Andrew undertake on behalf of the Assembly are important. You are the #1 Assembly member in terms of promoting this institution and taking those opportunities, and we have been grateful for the work that you've done in the last year on our behalf, so thank you for that.
Assemblymember Russell.
Thank you. I'm not going to echo all the things that have already been said, Onkar, but I particularly wanted to thank you for working with me on that chair's motion last November about road traffic victims and the Assembly remembering those victims. It is something that is very meaningful for Londoners whose lives have been devastated by tragic and awful crashes on our roads, and I really appreciated the way that you worked with me on that, so thank you very much for that and for all that you've done for the Assembly over this last year.
Assemblymember Pigeon.
Lovely. Can I thank Onkar Sahota on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group? I think you have been very dignified in the role, and particularly through some huge events, historic events, attending the state funeral for Queen Elizabeth on behalf of the Assembly. A huge honour, but also something you carried out beautifully alongside some of the other sort of civic events we've had over the last year. You've been a calm presence, you've had dignity and authority in the role, and we would like to thank you for your year as chair.
Assemblymember Garrett.
I would just like to add on behalf of the Conservative group my thanks to Dr. Onkar Sahota for chairing the Assembly over the last year. As Assemblymember Duval said, it's been sometimes quite a contested political debate, which is all good stuff. And I think it is very easy to sit here and point out how it might be done differently, but I think it is a very different thing to sit in the chair and to have to do it. And I think you have sat in the chair all year and you have done it very well. Thank you, Chair.
I think Assemblymember Boff to conclude the speeches.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank Dr. Sahota for the work that he's given over the past year, and to congratulate him on the time that he has spent. One of the things that's undoubted is I think he has had the same commitment to this body that I have, to ensuring that the importance of the London Assembly is maintained, and to the relevance that the London Assembly is to the lives of Londoners. And in that, there is not a thing that comes between us. And it has been a real pleasure to serve as the Deputy Chair alongside you. So thank you so much for that.
We have a small gift.
We do indeed.
Okay, we have a gift.
Right.
Unexpected.
I'm reliably informed that we have the same choices, so in terms of what's in the bottle. So, thank you.
Good, thank you everybody. So we now move to the election of the Chair of the Assembly for the 23-24 Assembly year. And in a moment, I will call for nominations for the office of Chair of the London Assembly. In the event of one candidate being nominated, and if it becomes clear that there are no other nominations, I will declare the nominated candidate as being Chair of the London Assembly. In the event of two or more candidates being nominated, I will pause the process and explain the rules in more detail. Once the Chair is elected, they will conduct the election for the office of Deputy Chair of the London Assembly. So can I now have nominations for the office of Chair of the London Assembly for the period until the next annual meeting of the Assembly? Assembly Member Garrett.
If I could make a nomination, Chair, I would like to nominate Assembly Member Andrew Boff for the role of Assembly Chair for the coming year.
Thank you. And may I have a seconder for that nomination?
And I'd like to second that nomination.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garrett, do you wish to speak in support of your nomination?
Neil.
You don't.
I think Andrew's qualities as Chair speak for themselves after the fine year that he had a year ago, and I think he will continue to do an excellent role as he did that time. So I'm very happy to be nominating him for that role a second time in this term.
And Assembly Member Duval, do you wish to speak in support of your nomination?
I'm very happy to support Andrew Boff for this role, and I think for those very reasons that Neil Garrett has outlined. I think it's important in this coming year. I think there's some unfinished business from the Assembly that was started by Dr. Onka Sahota in terms of our relationship with a sister city, Kyiv, that has some difficulties, and you may have some expertise that if our colleagues are in agreement, we might try to push on because that was some very important work started under Onka, and the Mayor has engaged with that, and we could do some very good work on that, and I look forward to seeing if we can move that in supporting a sister city internationally in these difficult times. But let's talk about you, Andrew. You've had a rest. Welcome back. You know, we're not going to make it look, it's trying to say it's all going to be nice between us and everything else, and usually it is nice between us outside some of our formal meetings, but you know, this is going to be a very interesting year politically for everybody from their different perspectives, and you know, I'm looking forward to you chairing it in the way that you chaired the first year, which again, you know, people will quibble. But by and large, you've chaired well in the previous circumstances, and look forward to you not really being too strict with me. You can be strict with others. But, you know, I'm trying to get favour here, but I've just blown it. But looking forward to working with you in the coming year. And you have the full support of our group in trying to keep us in order. Good luck with that.
Thank you. So I do need to ask, are there any other nominations?
I'd like to move nominations closed.
Would any other group leader wish to make a speech at this stage? Assemblymember Russell.
Sorry, I just want to, because I didn't say earlier, but I absolutely give the full support of the Green Group to Andrew Boff as chair. He is always very fair and very good at mediating in our meetings. So look forward to your year ahead.
Good. So, in the absence of any further nominations, I formally declare Assemblymember Andrew Boff as Chair of the London Assembly for the period up until the next annual meeting of the Assembly.
Shall I put the badge on, Chair? Yes, go on.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you for those very kind words that were said, and I hope to live up to your expectations in the year ahead. As Assemblymember Dr. Sahota has mentioned, it's been a year of some challenges, particularly around the cost of living. And what we do know is, even though we might have some varying solutions about how to resolve that, we absolutely, as an Assembly, are united in addressing the cost of living crisis that exists in our city today. And as the Assembly has played an important part in supporting Londoners through these challenges. As we've seen from the past few years, it's difficult to predict what the year ahead will bring. But one thing I am sure of is the Assembly will continue to be the voice of London. We must continue to scrutinise the Mayor's plans, challenge his decisions, and ensure that the priorities of Londoners are front and centre of the work we do at City Hall. Now, we're kidding ourselves if we think that the London Assembly is not a political body. Of course we are a political body. We come from different parties, slightly different outlooks on life, and this year ahead is probably going to bring that into sharp relief. Always, I've been long enough on the Assembly to know that the demob year is the one when parties in particular want to state their positions and pursue their agendas. But we all know that's going to happen. It's not as though it's going to be a surprise for anyone here, and just bear that in mind. I do hope you bear that in mind both in the committees and in this body over the following year. To do this work together, we must work across the political divide. There is no other way of this body existing unless we have a consensus. That doesn't mean we give in on arguments. It just means there are so many things that unite us, and actually only a few that divide us. In this year, I must say that I do, as my priority as chair for this year, I do want to hear the voices of young people in this chamber more. It is the young people, in my view, that have suffered most during this cost of living crisis, and I think at this point we need to hear their voices straight from the young people's mouths. So our work has helped shape London over the past 23 years. We commit to working on behalf of Londoners and with the Mayor to ensure that City Hall delivers for all those who live here. Thank you very much. Thank you. I now move on to the election. Is that right, Rebecca? Yeah, I haven't skipped one. I will now move on to the election of the Deputy Chair of the London Assembly. May I please have nominations for the office of Deputy Chair of the London Assembly for the 2023-2024 Assembly year? Assembly Member Duval.
Chair, can I move Dr. Onkar Sahota for that position?
Thank you. Do I have any seconders for that? Assembly Member Garrett.
I'd be delighted to second the nomination of Dr. Onkar Sahota for Deputy Chair of the Assembly for the coming year.
Can I ask if there are any other nominations for the position of Deputy Chair of the Assembly for the ensuing year? There being none, I can now declare that Dr. Onkar Sahota will be the Deputy Chair of London for the Assembly for the 2023-24 year. Have I read that correctly? Assembly Member Duval.
Just before we move off on this part of the business and move to the next item, there have been a number of changes in positions, but I think it's only right that I make some comment of one particular change. And with your indulgence, I can't see anywhere else on the agenda that would be appropriate for me to do that. Could I take...
I'll allow it now. Funny enough, I was going to talk about something later, but I'll let you seize the moment.
Thank you very much. At this moment in time, I understand that our Conservative colleagues have changed leader. I want to use this moment to congratulate my colleague on becoming the new leader of the Conservative group, but particularly I want to pay tribute to the past leader of the Labour group. And I would like to say... Conservative group, sorry. Slip of the tongue. That was my John Prescott moment. Indulge me. Look, I want to say a couple of things, and the things that I do want to say is this. Susan, we may have been on the different political sides, but you've always said your mission here to Labour was to make yourself a nuisance. I don't see that. I see your mission here was the contribution to democracy and London democracy, and I think you played a major role in contributing that along with the rest of your colleagues in the Assembly, but you did it by some of the hard work and determination of trying to get your points across, but also, you didn't just sit back and sit in your chair, you did put in a shift. And over that shift, it doesn't really matter about me, but actually, I've admired your style. I've not always agreed with you, but I've admired your style for it. And I think you played a major part in London's democracy in the way that you have carried through the arguments in opposition to the Mayor and to other political groups on this Assembly. I do want to just also say that, you're going to be a hard act to follow. To be honest, you are going to be hard at. We ain't going to miss you because you're still going to be here and you're still going to be equally determined to make your case. But we should not allow this passing of roles to not be said about that contribution you've made and about how we on this side of the table may have viewed your contribution. It didn't feel comfortable sometimes, but actually you did your job well, and it should be said that.
Thank you very much. Yeah. You stole my thunder. Basically, Assembly Member Hall, what he said. So I don't want to repeat that. Assembly Member Russell.
I just want to very briefly say how much, as a fellow group leader, I have appreciated working with Susan. We disagree on all sorts of things politically, and we couldn't be further apart on many issues. But personally, I have seen the way that Susan takes the business of democracy in London very seriously, and the loyalty that you show to the other group leads, and that where we work together for the good of the Assembly, cross-party, and I have really appreciated working with you in that way. Thank you.
Assembly Member Pigeon.
Could I also, on behalf of our group, agree with colleagues what they've said about Assembly Member Hall? And I think people have no idea the workload that the leaders carry on this Assembly on behalf of all of the groups. There's a huge amount of work that's unseen, and but keeps this institution going, and particularly through the pandemic, working closely with Susan and on the calls and supporting each other in that work that we had to carry out for all that time. And since the move here has been difficult for many of us, the leaders have carried a huge workload trying to make this place work in some way, even though we disagree, most of us, with the move here. And also, at the heart of all of this, regardless of our politics, which are completely different, the work and reputation of the London Assembly and this institution matters. It matters hugely to all of us, and Susan has been at the heart of that. So I would like to put on record as well our appreciation for her work, and we look forward to hearing her sharp questioning of the Mayor shortly at Mayor's Question Time, and her continued work, but in a different role on the Assembly.
Assembly Member Cooper.
Thank you. We've just heard from all the group leaders, so you might think there's nothing else to add, but obviously 2021 saw Len Duval, our group leader, detained elsewhere on other business to do with his health. And I just wanted to add my thanks to Susan. Caroline's just referred to the amount of work that's done by the group leaders. I suddenly found myself having to cover Len's role and received a lot of support from the Labour group internally to allow me to do that, very suddenly, completely unexpectedly. But Susan was particularly helpful during that period of time, along with the other group leaders. I think they say that to create a natural pearl, you need a bit of grit in the centre of the oyster. And I think that is the role of scrutiny of all of us, but particularly, I think Susan has been a leading light in terms of that scrutiny as part of this Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
That all being said... Oh, I beg your pardon. Assembly Member... I couldn't see a hand. Assembly Member Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to your new spot, which I'm delighted to see you back in. I just wanted to, I think the phrase "big shoes to fill" has been used quite a lot. I think in recognition of the comments around the Assembly that we've just heard. I think within our group we recognise all of those comments. About Susan. Who's led the group since 2019 through the disruption of the pandemic, which in itself was extremely difficult and fundamentally changed the whole way that the Assembly had to work, and then the election, and then the false start of the election, then a delay to the election, and that the previous run into the election year, and then steadying the ship with the move to the new building, which I know we're all really delighted about, and re-establishing a sort of normal in-person business, which we now have, and consolidating us as a group. I don't know whether all of the groups on the Assembly would echo this, but it seems to me that we're working as better than we ever have as a Conservative group on this Assembly. That's my judgment. I think that's the judgment of our group, and that didn't happen by accident. It happened because of that work that Susan has done. So I'm conscious of the big shoes, and I'm conscious of the handing over of the baton, and I hope that I can continue that, the work that Susan has done, and take us, let's say, to the point where some other groups are continuing to be not always happy with the points that we're making, but I'm sure respecting the challenge that we give to the Mayor and to each other in this body. So I'd like to thank Susan for her 4 years as leader, and recognising the daunting task I have ahead, continuing that work. So thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Normally they don't say such nice things about people until you're dead. So actually, Susan, I think you're quite privileged, really. Anyway, let's move back to the agenda. Let's move back to the agenda. I'm now going to move on to the apologies for absence. First of all, can I welcome members and the public here in the gallery or watching on the webcast to today's annual meeting of the London Assembly. The London Assembly is the voice of London. It's comprised of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to an account and to take up issues of importance to Londoners. Can I ask the Clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to confirm any apologies for absence today?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Assembly members McCartney, Desai, Ahmad, Moema, Fortune, Polanski, Prince and Devonish.
Thank you. Can I also formally record at this point that Neil Garrett AM has been elected as leader of City Hall Conservatives. Can we next move on to declarations of interest? Can I ask the Assembly to note the recommendations set out at item 3? And also, can I ask Assembly members to declare any other disclosable pecuniary interests or other relevant interests where they relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting? I've heard none, so we'll move on to the minutes. Can I ask the Assembly to confirm the minutes of the London Assembly plenary meeting held on the 16th of March 2023 and of the Mayor's question time held on the 23rd of March 2023 for me to sign as correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to the establishment of Assembly committees and bodies for 2023-24. Assembly members have been sent a bundle of tabled papers which set out the proposed committee structure for 23-24, the terms of reference, memberships and chairs and deputy chairs, and that document has been published on the GLA website. Good. The reason I ask is it's been a bit of a last-minute thing, so as long as it's there, that's brilliant. I propose dealing with agenda items 5, 6 and 7 together, and I am therefore moving amended recommendations as follows. Nobody's protesting. So can I ask the Assembly to establish the bodies set out in the tabled Appendix 1 as ordinary committees for the 2023-24 Assembly year with the size, constitution, terms of reference, membership, substitute members, chairs and deputy chairs as also set out in that appendix?
Agreed.
And B, to establish the bodies set out in the tabled Appendix 2 as working groups of the GLA Oversight Committee for the 23-24 Assembly year with the size, constitution, terms of reference, membership, chairs and deputy chairs as also set out in the appendix.
Agreed.
And to note that the committee structure as set out in the tabled appendix complies with the proportionality rules in accordance with the provisions of Section 17 of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989. Noted, thank you. Can I ask the Assembly to reconfirm the existing standing delegation to the Chair of the Assembly to decide to hold a confirmation hearing and to decide whether to request the candidate to produce any documents?
Agreed.
And for the last one, can I ask the Assembly to reconfirm the previous decisions of the then Business Management and Appointments Committee in respect of committee meetings and work programmes as set out in paragraphs 4.48 and 4.49 of the report?
Agreed.
Do you know that used to take such a long time years ago, and it's done rather quickly now, so thank goodness for that. Members are also advised that the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Confirmations Hearing Committee will be decided by that committee at its next meeting. I'm now moving on, if I'm skipping 5, 6 and 7... I'm now moving on to the date of the Assembly and committee meetings for 23-24. Can the Assembly agree the timetable of the London Assembly and committee meetings for the 23-24 Assembly year?
Agreed.
The GLA corporate plan, corporate governance documents are next. We now take agenda item 9, which sets out, namely the Assembly and Mayoral scheme of delegations, as well as to confirm a standing delegation of authority to the Executive Director of Assembly Secretariat. Can I therefore ask the Assembly to agree to the recommendations set out in the report and raise any response?
Agreed.
It's all agreed. On item 10, the Assembly has previously nominated members to represent the Assembly on various outside bodies for the period up until the next GLA elections. At the 2021 annual meeting, we requested that those Assembly members appointed to serve on outside bodies report to the Assembly on an annual basis in respect of their work. Can I therefore ask the Assembly to note the reports of Assembly Member Dr. Sahota and Assembly Member Cooper as set out in agenda item 10.
Agreed.
Item 11. Can I ask the Assembly to agree, noting that it is a joint decision with the Mayor and is in line with the pay award agreed for GLA staff grades 10 to 15 and spot rates, that a pay award of 4.5% and the wider benefits detailed at paragraph 3.3 of the report should be made to the GLA's statutory officers. Yeah, it's an agreed one. Onkai, rather than noted. So that is agreed. Can I ask the Assembly to agree to use the 8th of June 2023 plenary meeting principally to hold a question and answer session on the infrastructure in London with invited guests? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
The next scheduled meeting of the London Assembly will be the Mayor's Question Time at 10 a.m. on the Thursday, the 18th of May 2023 in the Chamber at City Hall, followed by a plenary meeting at 2 p.m. We now move on to any other items of business that the Chair considers urgent, and I do have one item. This meeting sees the last meeting at which Fiona Bywaters will be a crucial and critical part. She is leaving us to get a less interesting job at the office of Rail and Road as their head of Secretariat, and congratulations on that. I have valued Fiona enormously over the past 4 years, of course, for the work that she's done, but she's the only other person in this building who knows what's happening on RuPaul's Drag Race at a regular time. I don't know why it is that she's particularly gone for the rail. What are they called? The Office of Rail and Road. There are so many talents that she has developed over the past 4 years. She could become a music hall act spinning plates. You know, she could be a kindergarten teacher. Well, I think you've been given a lot of experience over the past 4 years, and you'd be a great herder of cats. So, but I do wish you well. And I do hope that you will look back at your time with the Assembly with great fondness. But now, Fiona, I'm afraid it's time to sashay away. Thank you very much. There being no other items, I didn't shift seats, I was supposed to. I now call this business, it's closed. Yes.
This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.